Lisa Sabaniak here from lifelikeyoumeanit.com, coming to you live today so that we can chat about some of your belief systems that you have in place and a strategy that you can use to start to let go of some of these beliefs. So, if you follow the work that I do, or even if you're new to this group, you may have seen that I post an awful lot about beliefs and about us being able to raise our awareness for what it is that we believe and why it is that we do the things that we do, and taking responsibility for our behavior. So, that's what I would like to continue on talking with today in terms of those belief systems that you have in place and how we can start to let those go. So, first of all, our belief systems that we have often are things that we are completely unaware of, right? It's not uncommon at all for us to be surprised when we actually discover a belief that is running our show. And once we become aware of it, then we see the pattern everywhere. Right? We think, oh my god, I cannot believe that I didn't see this before. And for a lot of people, when they realize that, yeah, you know what, I do recognize that I have some beliefs that are maybe not self serving. There may be quite negative beliefs that I don't want anymore, or they're really impacting my life in a negative way. They automatically assume that these are beliefs about yourself, right? Your abilities, your place in the world, right? So things like believing that you're not good enough, or that you don't deserve better, you're not smart enough or pretty enough, or whatever it is. Beliefs about not being able to do it. But also, we, especially if we are come from an abusive past and we have trauma that's in our past, we make the assumption that those types of beliefs, believing that we're not good enough and we can't do it and all of that, that they stem from that abuse. And while that may be 100% true, a lot of times some of those beliefs actually started before the abuse actually even began, and the abuse just acted rather as evidence to reinforce that belief within you. And other people are really surprised to realize that even with abuse or trauma, that some of the beliefs that they generated actually had nothing to do with abuse. It maybe had something to do with something as simple as their best friend as a little child moved away, right? And even though as an adult you look at that and you say, well, obviously kids move away, and depending on how old you are, you wouldn't have had Facebook or any type of online ability to keep in touch, and so you lose touch. But when you're a kid, while some of that makes some sense, you do have the huge element of just feeling like you've been left, right? You feel like you are alone. You've got that loss and you don't know how to deal with that. So we are talking about beliefs that can be there because of the abuse or trauma that you've experienced, but also they might just be there from other experiences in life. So when you're starting to try to raise your awareness and recognize the beliefs that you have as a trauma survivor, you are more likely to sit there and actually think about how the trauma made you feel, or how the trauma has, impacted you, and think about your beliefs in that sense. And in a way, you end up missing some of the beliefs that are running your show because they formed outside of that bubble of trauma. So that's my first bit of advice to you, is that when you're raising your awareness and you're looking to try to uncover what some of these beliefs are, don't assume that they've come from any particular experience of yours. Okay. And this is what I mean, or how you can do it instead. Instead of thinking about the experiences that you've had in the past, which could end up re-triggering some of those emotions, right, that you went through. And we really don't want that to happen either. You can simply just look at the things that you say to yourself, really start to become aware and really conscious about the words that you use to talk to yourself, right? So the things that nobody else hears. And then also pay attention to what it is that you're saying about yourself. So when you are talking to somebody about something that you're doing or something that you're experiencing, how are you talking about yourself? If you're in business for yourself, right? Somebody asks you about the business. How do you describe that business? The same thing as even if you're not in business for yourself, your career. How do you describe your career? You're looking for things like, do you brush it off and just be like, oh, I'm just a, right? And whatever it is, do you accept compliments when somebody gives them to you, or are you always quick to brush those away, right? Are you always quick if you've got something that is really exciting and that you're proud of and that you want to celebrate with somebody, but then when you actually go to have people around and they've brought up this and and it's attention that you're getting for it, are you able to actually enjoy that? Or are you quick to dismiss it and turn the celebration into something else for somebody else, for example, right? So all of these little things can start giving us clues as to what our beliefs are. And we don't need to look at where they came from or why they're there. We just need to raise awareness that they are there. But I'm also talking about the other beliefs that run your show, beliefs that are not about you specifically, but are about more broad, general things like the type of career you're supposed to have as a woman versus a man, if you're supposed to get married and what age you're supposed to be, and how many children you're supposed to have, and what size of house you're supposed to have, and when that's supposed to happen, and the white picket fence you're supposed to have around your house, and right? What kind of car you're supposed to drive and how much money's supposed to be in your bank account, right? And then that brings me to your belief about money, right? What's your belief about how hard you're supposed to work for money? What it says about you as a person if you make a lot of money versus if you don't make a lot of money. If you have more money than what you need, do you have some deep-rooted belief there that that means that you're somehow a bad person, that you're greedy, that you did something wrong to earn that money, that you're taking it from the rest of us, that you stepped on the backs of the little people to get to where you are? There's all kinds of beliefs like this that are impacting us. And one of the biggest problems that I see with my clients is that when we start to unpack those beliefs, we're focused, the client is focused so much on the beliefs that came from the abuse and trauma that they miss everything else. And I'm an exact example of this, really, because I worked on every single one of my beliefs about not being good enough, being stupid, ugly, worthless, useless, right? All of these beliefs that were running my show. And of course, they're horrible beliefs that, of course, they're going to impact you negatively. So I really benefited from doing all of this. Really, for me, it was really difficult work because I didn't have a therapist or an NLP practitioner or whatever helping me. I was doing this in my 20s before the internet with books, right? So it didn't, it meant that there was nobody there holding me accountable and showing me the path and giving me actual tools to use and tasks to do and challenging me in that way. It was up to me to go out and buy a book, read the book, and implement whatever was in the book. And of course, without that accountability, there'd be weeks and months and sometimes years that would pass where I just wouldn't, right? So it took a lot longer for me, which is partly why I do what I do, is to help other people do it in a much more concise manner than what I did it with. But I made the same mistake and I focused on those very big and very impactful beliefs that was necessary for me to unpack, full stop. But I missed the beliefs that I had about money. So when I decided to come out as a survivor of abuse, about, I guess that's about 5 years ago now, maybe 4 years ago, five, something like that. Anyways, when I decided to come out as a survivor and write my blog, and then that kickstarted this whole business that I have now, I got myself a coach. And it was somebody that I knew and I respected and I had worked with in back in Canada, because I'm in the UK now. We worked together where I actually was her doula and her massage therapist and her acupuncturist. So I was there for the birth of their first child. And we had a different type of relationship there. She moved off to California, became a life coach. I moved off to the UK, became a science teacher. And then I was finding my way into this business that I now have. And one of the first things that she had me do, I decided, I need to get a coach so that I can make sure that I am on track, that I figure out exactly what I want to do. Because outside of just writing a blog, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted this to look like. So I decided I'm going to do this right, and I'm going to get a coach. And Chris is her name, Chris Atley. And so Chris and we start working together. And one of the first things that she has me do is start looking at my beliefs. And I literally said to her, "Oh, no, no, I got this." And she was like, pardon? I'm like, "No, no, no, Chris, I don't need to do work on my beliefs because I have nailed that. That was basically my entire 20s, working into my 30s, right? I have unpacked all of my beliefs, girl. That is not my problem. We can move on to something else." And she was like, "Okay. How about I just give you this exercise called the money mindset? And you just take this and just work your way through it. And if you still believe that you've worked through all of your beliefs, Lisa, then fine, we'll move past this." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And I printed this out and I was like, all reluctant, like I knew better than she knew. And well, I've done all this work, and I start working and it's the very first question. And I went, right. Okay, I have done a lot of work about my beliefs, but I've done no work about these kind of seemingly fluffy beliefs, if you will. When you do hardcore work on yourself about feeling like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're useless, you're worthless, those type of beliefs seem deep, right? And intrinsic. And when you look at a belief about money or belief about success and what that looks like and things like that, that seems frivolous. It's like, well, that's not running my show. That's definitely not the big thing. It was a big thing. It was a big thing, right? It wasn't tied to my abuse at all. Yeah, it was tied somewhat to those other beliefs that I used to have about not being good enough and not being able to do it and things like that. But it was its own separate monster, its own separate belief that was running my show. And I never knew it, never gave it any attention whatsoever because I was so focused on what I thought were the deep beliefs that I needed to work through. So that's my big suggestion to you when you start to try to raise your awareness about what it is that you are believing. First of all, don't go back to what has caused any of the beliefs. We don't need to look at what has caused the belief. We can do all kinds of things without risking being triggered by that. Plus, we then don't risk getting ourselves into tunnel vision, assuming that our beliefs that we're going to be working on and unpacking are all about abuse and trauma, because they're not, right? And then even more so, that all of our beliefs are not just about ourselves and our ability and our place in the world. Some of our beliefs are deep-rooted societal beliefs, or beliefs that come from our culture, or beliefs that come from our individual families, right? Whatever socioeconomic status that we grew up in, things like that, that have nothing to do with trauma at all. So first bit of advice is don't make any assumptions whatsoever, and just start to listen to the way you speak to yourself. And I'm talking about when things are going well and when things are not going well. Okay. So really listen to how you talk to yourself and about yourself, and then start paying attention to the bigger picture, right? How you talk about your family and your work, your business, all of those other aspects, your health, anything at all. You catch yourself saying little things like, "I can't run. I'm not built to be a runner." Okay, why? I say that to myself all the time, right? Until I decided that I was going to start to run. And then I would catch myself saying that to other people, making excuses, saying, "Well, I run very slowly and I'm taking my own time and I can't seem to get over this hump, but it's all right. I'm not built to be a runner." Until I caught myself saying that one day, probably for like the 50th time, as I was, making an excuse for why I wasn't improving on this. And I thought, I wonder if I'm not improving on this because I've got myself convinced that I'm not built to be a runner, so I can't actually improve on this. I'm holding myself back with this piddly belief that I don't know why I generated this belief or where it had come from. And it doesn't matter, really. What I need to do is decide if I want it. Do I want to believe in this belief anymore? Is this something that I can actually do without? And if it is, what does my life look like without having this belief? And am I able to just let this go? Can I actually feel the removal of this belief as it just slides off of me? And that's what I want you to do. So I want you to first raise your awareness as to what these beliefs are. Don't assume that they're going to be really hardcore, deep, heavy, triggering beliefs. They might be simple little things about money, about how hard you have to work, about what family looks like, what happiness looks like, what weight you're supposed to be, whether or not you're built to be a runner. Or it could be all these kinds of things. And in essence, if you actually start with something that's not really so much part of your identity, like whether or not you're worthy, something like that, it makes this exercise a little bit easier and you can see some progress and it stimulates you to propel yourself forward and do it again with another belief that's maybe a little bit more heavily rooted, and then again and again and again. And so, what you just want to do is make this a regular thing that you do. Consistency is key here. It's about creating a new habit. So, the habit of raising your awareness is really mindfulness, right? It's really paying attention to what you're paying attention to. Right? Really, without any judgment. When you notice that you are saying things to yourself or you're speaking about yourself to somebody else, take mental note of what it is that you are saying. Write it down if you need to so you can look back on it later and then start asking yourself, all right, why was that what I said, right? Why was I not willing to accept that compliment that that person gave me? Why was I so quick to brush that off or make an excuse, call myself lucky when really I know that it was hard work that I put into this particular thing, right? Anything at all that it is. You raise your awareness for it and you say, all right, do I believe that I deserve this? Do I believe that, if somebody's complimented you on your hair today or on your outfit or on, I don't know, it doesn't matter, anything at all, right? And you weren't able to accept that compliment and you needed to brush it off and divert attention to something else and distract, right? As we often do because we don't want that attention on ourselves. Let's say, okay, is it that you don't believe that you deserve to have that compliment? Or is it that you don't believe that that compliment is true? Is there part of you that thinks that somebody's being nice to you because they want something, or that they're being ironic or mean to you, just flat out, right? You haven't got the sarcasm in it, but you know it's there. Something along those lines, right? And start to unpack and just ask yourself, okay, is this an actual belief that's running the show here? A belief about other people, a belief about myself, whatever it is. And then you can do this as part of a meditation if you want, or certainly in silence and in a quiet space on your own, certainly is the best bet at the beginning until you get used to doing something like this. And you could just basically close your eyes and just feel what it feels like to have this belief. Where are you feeling it in your body to have this belief? Does it make your body feel heavy? Does it come out as a specific spot in your body, like shoulder tension or headache or upset tummy or something like that, right? And just allow yourself to feel what it's like to have this belief. And then just ask yourself, does this belief have to be true? And just sit with that. You don't have to have an automatic reaction. You can just sit and just put that notion of doubt into your mind of, does this belief have to be true? Is it true? Is it just something that I believe? Right? Just because you think something doesn't mean that it's true, right? It just means you've thought it. Same thing with your beliefs, right? It got there for some reason, but it doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that that's what you thought at that particular time, and whoop, it stuck, and you've been looking for evidence to corroborate it ever since. That's all that means. So open up yourself to doubt by just asking yourself, does this have to be what I believe? Does it have to be true? And when you've got your answer to that, hopefully you will end up with a feeling or a full out answer that does say, no, this doesn't have to be true. But if it is a yes, then sitting with that some more and starting to ask yourself some deeper questions for why has it become part of my identity? Can I imagine what I am without that belief? What does my life look like? What does it feel like to no longer believe that anymore? Right? And then start opening yourself up to be like, can I let this go? Again, it doesn't have to be an immediate answer that you get to the question, but just sitting and pondering these types of things. Can I let this belief go? And hopefully, eventually, you'll have a feeling or a word that indicates, yeah, you can actually let it go. That doesn't mean that you're willing to or that you're going to, but just that you can let it go. So then that becomes the next question. Will I let this go? Right? Am I ready to let this go now? And if that feels like, no, I'm not, then when? When can I let this go? And if it is yeah, actually, I can let this go now, then feel it slide off of you. That's how I do. I envision it like it's like tar that's on me and it slides off of me. And for me, I visualize me rising up and the tar just being pulled down by gravity and dripping right off of me, and then it gets absorbed into earth. And then I can come back down onto earth without it. But whatever works for you, right? Just allowing that to let that go. When I first started this exercise, it was me putting that belief into my hands, or like if I was offering a basket of something up to the universe. And then I would picture either a little angel or a bird or something like that that would come along and pick up that basket with holding those beliefs in it and fly away. And I could watch it go off into the distance, leaving me. So whatever works for you, right? So you might want to experiment with that or just kind of go with the flow, and it might be different every time. There's no right or wrong to this. And allowing yourself to let it go. And then again, just allow yourself to embrace in that moment, then what does it feel like now that that's gone, right? What does life look like? Who are you without this belief? And if your answers through this were no, right, I'm not ready to let this go, or I would like to let it go, but not now, there's no judgment that you pass on yourself, because this is again all about raising awareness and becoming more comfortable with who you are and what you need right now. It's all about acceptance through awareness, right? So the fact that you've gotten that far, that you've been able to become aware of what the belief is, you've been able to see where it is in your body and how that's impacting you, you've been able to visualize what life would be like without that. And now you've gotten to that point where it's like, okay, I'm not ready to let this go yet. And you don't know when that is. That is all right in itself. You can then move to, obviously, instead of the letting it go exercise part of this, then it can be an acceptance where you give thanks to yourself for showing this to you and for having this candid conversation with you and accepting that this is where you are right now. You're not ready to let that go, and that you will revisit this. And it's kind of like a pact with yourself that you will revisit this without judgment. And so then perhaps that's what you do every single day until you are ready to let go of that particular belief. Right? Again, just building on the habit of it. I hope that that all makes sense. And if you were ready to let it go in that moment, then you still set aside time the next day and uncover what that next belief is, right? And keep going. Make it part of your daily habit that you are actually making time for awareness. And eventually, what should end up happening as you become more and more confident with this is that you're able to catch what the belief is in the moment, right? Maybe even before you've even said anything to yourself, it just kind of comes up and you're like, yeah, I know what this is. And you're able to actually go through this without having to remove yourself and sit in silence or in a meditation type of state in order to do this. That you might actually even be able to let it go in that moment when you're in the middle of a conversation with somebody while you're doing something else. Right? I mean, I'm a big fan for taking that time for yourself for proper self-reflection. But for some people, they really they really feel fabulous when they can see that kind of level of um, improvement, if you will. It's kind of like working out, right? Where you really struggle the first time that you go to do an activity, but just 2 days later, when you go to do that same activity, you can actually see that you've increased your strength a little bit, or, your endurance a little bit. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. So for some people, they might find that you really appreciate and you can see your growth when you actually don't need to go and take that time, whereas other people will appreciate having that time, and they'll be able to see their growth by how quickly they are realizing what the belief is and how quickly they're able to let that go, right, and do the actual exercise itself. So be kind to yourself as always, and accept wherever you are today. I hope that that helps. Please let me know in the comments if that was helpful and anything that you would like me to address for you specifically. And I will make sure that my next live is about that. Bless.